Okay, so I wanted to get into the Cathie Wood podcast with Stephen Bartlett on Diary of the CEO. And I want to talk about a lot of people early on in their financial career, they'll start to save a lot of money. This is exactly what I did when I was building my worth up to over $5 million as of this past year. And as we're about to make a multi-million-dollar purchase in real estate, this is a lot of the stuff that I did early on. Is I would do research, I would watch these podcasts, and I would try and figure out what's the right thing to do. So one of the big heads up is that nothing is going to change as far as having higher income than expenses. Okay, so if we have higher income than expenses, that's going to enable us to save money. So we can play the victim and listen to Stephen Bartlett and how he and Cathie Wood are going on glazing each other, or glazing Elon Musk, so that Bartlett eventually could have Elon Musk on his podcast. And that'd be great. But it still doesn't change your financial setting. Okay, so you've got to recognize that even when you're listening to all this, at the bottom line, you have to have more income than expenses. Okay, the second thing you've got to do is you've got to chip away at any high interest debt. So if you have debt that's at a high interest over 10%, try to pay that off as quickly as possible. Then you got to try to save $10,000. Then you got to try to save $50,000. So all those things don't change. But what is so annoying when you're listening to the Diary of a CEO, and you're listening to Cathie Wood spew absolute horseshit half the time, probably more than half the time. She said one thing that I actually agreed with in there. She has these sound bites. She has these things where she's good at conning people. But in all reality, all we have to do is look at her track record. Okay, so the first big thing that I think everybody's got to be aware of is she's glazing Elon. He's glazing Elon. Again, I think that Stephen Bartlett's going to try and get Elon on his podcast. They're going back and forth, and they're just talking about how great Tesla is and how you should try to invest in Tesla. And then they publish the podcast. And then Cathie Wood, 2 days later, dumps a large portion of her Tesla investment. So we're listening to this, we're telling normal people, because Bartlett poses the question of, if you had $1,000, what would you do? If you could tell a normal person, and they say, invest in Tesla, and then she dumps Tesla, not entirely, but she dumps Tesla and says, literally a couple days later, after the podcast is published. So if you're a normal person, you're doing that, and then you're watching this going, wait, she just dumped some of this, and this is what she was saying on the podcast. And then the next thing that you end up seeing is, okay, now you should get in Bitcoin. In 5 years, it's going to be $1.5 million. Great. In 2012, I posted on Facebook that I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Glaze me. I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter, though, because the thing is that now today, somebody watches that. They have $1,000. They haven't paid off their debt. They haven't saved $10,000. They haven't bought a house. And now they hear that and they go, oh, this is going to go to the moon. It's going to be $1.5 million in 5 years. And they're going to go out and try and buy Bitcoin when it's at $105,000, $106,000, $107,000. And it's an absolute tragedy because we're focusing on Tesla. We're focusing on Bitcoin. Okay, so those things just absolutely trigger the shit out of me. Then she starts to say things like, okay, government spending is taxation. Well, okay, that sounds cool. What about government spending is security? Government spending is security. If we have a nice a great military here in the United States that helps protect us and helps keep us safe. I could say that, but it's not as catchy. So we got to be aware of those little trigger points that these people say to set you up to do things. And then we're looking at, and she's going through things like, okay, well, I'm investing in Tesla. I'm investing in eVTOL companies. Archer. Okay, I'm not saying eVTOL, so this is electric vehicles that are takeoff and landing. They're basically like human carrying drones, okay? It's going to be here in the next 10 years, most likely. However, if you're someone on the front line who's just saving your first $1,000, investing in Archer is not what you should be doing. Even thinking about eVTOLs is not what you should be doing. And whether or not Archer is the eVTOL company that's going to be the boom company in that space, we don't know. It's so far off. And this chick has been wrong so many times. We should not be listening to this, and we should not be considering this. Then you get into the stuff around Robotaxi and Tesla. The fact that they don't use a LiDAR system, okay? They can't currently they cannot compete with Waymo. They are way behind in regards to Waymo as far as robo taxis are actually concerned. Okay, so we have to think through that lens. Meanwhile, she's going on and on and on, glazing Elon. Again, Bartlett doesn't even pose any questions. The only question that he put out that was actually semi-pointed was, well, sir, or well, ma'am, what about, Elon's health? Doesn't he not sleep enough? What? Are we not trying to challenge people on these podcasts? Are we not trying to question them? And that's the whole issue I have even with the Dave Ramsey podcast, a lot of the Rogan podcasts. It's like, ask pointed questions. Now, here's the big drill that I want to do. If we took, okay, this is a real simple drill for everybody who's watched this podcast to think through this lens, okay? If we took this drill and we put $10,000 into SCHD in 2019, okay? That's an ETF, okay? Let's take $10,000, let's put it into VU in 2019. That's another ETF. Let's take $10,000 and put it into Cathie Woodark's ETF, ARK, ARKK, which she said you should do. You should just invest in my ETF. Let's take $10,000, 2019, and do that. Now, every month, put $50 in. Put $50 in, and you can go to Tip Ranks and do this. You can do this on freaking ChatGPT. It doesn't, and this is where it blows me away with Bartlett. I don't know if they missed the boat on doing the research on her, or if he didn't do any research on her, or again, if we know that everybody does have a financial stake when they're putting out content. So there is some means of Bartlett owns Tesla, so we know that he's trying to push Tesla. Possibly, we know he probably wants to get Elon Musk on, especially now that Elon's going to be doing damage control after he just left Trump's office, and now he's trying to basically regain some popularity so that he can, do a better job with his company. So maybe there is all of that is going on the back end. But let's go back to the drill. We put $10,000 into ARK. We spend $50 a month. This is what happens. Okay, at the end from 2019 to today, to right now, this is June 7th of 2025, you would have 155% more gains in VU, which is just the S&P 500. You could have put $1,000 based off of Stephen Bartlett's question. You could have put $1,000 in 2019 into VU, and you could have every month put $50 in, and you'd have 155% more gains than if you put it into Cathie Woodark's ETF. And that's she got outperformed by the S&P by 155%. Now, if we look at another ETF, another popular one, SCHD, this is another one that I love, okay? What do? You put same thing. Let's just play the Bartlett question. You put $1,000 into SCHD. You spend $50 every single month putting into SCHD. You got 79% more gains than you did if you put it into ARK. 79%. So we have this person as this person of power. We're going to listen to everything that she has to say. She's going to speak in all these big words. You're going to watch and you're going to think she's a genius. And then you're going to go put $1,000 into ARK and you're going to be outperformed by 155% or 80% basically. Or you go put money into Tesla. She sells Tesla the next day and you're going, what the heck? Or you go put it into Archer and you're sitting there trying to wait for Archer to pop off for 2 to 3 years. Or you go buy Bitcoin and then you're sitting there going, man, maybe I shouldn't have done this because I'm not at that point yet. I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in crypto. I'm saying that there's points along the way that you have to focus on. You got to make more money than you spend. Okay. And then you got to chip away at the easy stuff. You should invest into ETFs like VU, like SCHD. Okay. You got to pay off the high interest debt. You have to do all that stuff. Then you got to save 10K. Then you got to get to 50K. That's when you start to invest into those ETFs. The crazy part here is that I didn't even do this math, but I'm pretty sure you would have 100% outperformed ARK, the ETF, if you would have just put that $1,000 into a high yield savings account. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty positive that we would get there. I could probably do the math a little quickly, but that's the big factor, is that when we're watching these podcasts, we've got to think critically. We've got to look at things, and we've got to actually ask pointed questions. And that's going to enable us to take that step back and think through our own finances and where we're at. Where you're at matters. Okay, so just be aware of all that stuff. I hope this helps somebody out there. Peace. Okay, I'm finishing up my run here, and I did not mention the one thing that Cathie Wood said that I did somewhat agree with. she brought up some things. I did want to say, I think she was pushing Broadcom. I'm pretty sure she was pushing Broadcom. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure she was. Now, she did say Palantir. That's one that I do think is going to be absolutely massive. A huge portion of my own portfolio is Palantir. So I do agree with that. But she didn't even mention AMD. AMD over the next 2 years is going straight up. Okay, look up MI350s, look up MI400s, AMD, Palantir, that's where it's going to be in that space. But again, if you don't have that base savings, you don't have a home, you don't have that stuff saved yet, that's not where you're at. It's all part of your journey, and that's a long ways off if you're not at that point, because we're talking about that $1,000 investment that Bartlett pitched. So I did want to add that into the end of this video. Peace.